Hey guys, my name is Alex, and this is the 25th or 26th installment of my video project series Thing, Kingly Endeavors, in which I'm reading all of Stephen King's novels in loosely chronological order and trying to find trends and analyze. Today I'm talking about the 6th of 7 installments in his Dark Tower series, The Song of Susanna. A few days ago I already filmed a video talking about Song of Susanna, but then I deleted it because, for one thing, you can probably see that there's a better lighting situation going on. But the other reason, the more important reason that I got rid of the Song of Susanna conversation is because it was 40 minutes long and entirely meandering. I didn't want to go through the burden of trying to edit it, and so I deleted it, and then I just started thinking constructively of like, okay, what went wrong with that video? Why did I have such a hard time? And I think the reason I botched that attempt at having a discussion video about Song of Susanna is because I was trying to analyze it as a novel. And now, in retrospect, I kinda don't think it is a novel. One of my guides in the journey through this series has been Daniel Green. He's a big-time YouTuber who speaks pretty much exclusively about sci-fi and fantasy. He's made some very passionate and very helpful videos about exploring the series, trying to make sense of it. And as I was exploring his channel, and I get this vibe from Steve Donahue's channel too, he's a big lifetime fan of sci-fi and fantasy, is that the sci-fi and fantasy readership, kind of like the romance readership, as much as they love the stories and the conventions of the stories, I think they are just as wedded, just as fond of the publishing conventions behind how those stories are transmitted. That sounds very lofty and messy. What I mean is that romance readers seem to be among the most avidly loyal readers of any genre, and at the same time, romance novelists seem to be among the most prolific. And from what I've seen on romance channels, it seems that if you're a romance reader and your favorite romance novelist is releasing 3 200-page novels a year, you are going to hungrily devour those cumulative 600 pages a year. Conversely, if you are a sci-fi and fantasy fan and your favorite sci-fi fantasy epic writer releases 1,200 pages of fiction every 2 years, you are going to hungrily devour those 1,200 pages. And I think that part of the allure for avid sci-fi and fantasy readers is the fact that their helpings of the stories are so fucking whopperish. And I'm kind of just deducing here, I don't know if it's necessarily true, but that most romance readers, by that same token, part of what they dig about the genre is the fact that they can read a romance novel in the course of 4 nights. And as someone who's not really big into sci-fi and fantasy, I get a sense that the enormity of this story, the free-rangingness, is a large part of what is enticing the intended readership. Like, I'm a huge fan of horror movies, and if you like horror movies, particularly slasher movies, those tend to come with a huge amount of gore. Audiences who are not familiar with the genre will sit down in the theater and they'll watch it and they'll be like, why the fuck is this movie so red? It's because, yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with this story in particular, it's just the trappings of the genre. And it's happening again, I'm meandering, but like whenever I'm watching someone's booktube channel and they're holding up a tome of sci-fi, it's volume 1 in an 8-volume series and it's 1,300 pages, and in a very cavalier way, they're like, oh yeah, this looked good, I figure I'll give it a try. I never allow an author to have like a debut performance in my library with a 1,300 page story. Like, if it's our first date, you've got 300, maybe 400 pages to let me know if I want to spend the rest of my life with you. But another thing that makes it difficult to talk about Song of Susanna is that I brought some baggage. At 400 and something pages, it is among the shortest, which is cool, a nice breather between, you know, the 900 pages of Wolves of the Kala and the 900 pages of Dark Tower. But the character Susanna is, she suffers dissociative identity disorder, and she, Susanna, is actually at this point in the series the merging of 2 disparate personalities. The benevolent voice is basically non-existent at this point, but the pernicious, like, burn everything to the ground voice, Odetta, is still very present, still chimes up in Susanna's thoughts, and Odetta speaks a kind of exaggerated white boomer perception of crackerjack daddy-o jive talk. It's cringy. It's been cringy in every volume. And I was really dreading that this volume was going to be Stephen King immersing himself pretty much entirely in Susanna's head, putting her in a position where she would just be conversing endlessly with the different sides of her personality. Fortunately, it wasn't quite that. There was a lot of it, but I did find the exploration of Susanna's character to be pretty rewarding, and that's fine. Like, even though this is one of the shorter volumes of the series, it's still very bloated with these endless conversations that she's having with the 2 sides of herself. But fortunately, I can say that this volume does feature one of the best set pieces in the entire series. And that is the understandably divisive, controversial instance in which Stephen King, the author, inserts himself, Stephen King, the character, into the narrative. Two of the main characters, Roland and Eddie, they go to Maine in like 1982. There, they meet like a 30-something-year-old Stephen King, which is basically the actual Stephen King parodying his retroactive perception of what he must have been like as a drunk father. I really, really love that section, and I love what Stephen King is doing in these last 3 volumes by making himself an integral part of the story. And this is really what I have to offer in the way of analysis, which is that Stephen King is really just trying to get this done. It is obvious that his heart is in this, and I do get the impression that he took more editorial input on this series than in almost anything else he has written over the past 20 years. These last 3 volumes of The Dark Tower are basically their own trilogy, separate from the rest of the series, and one of the things that so distinguishes them is the fact that they are, at heart, basically about the creative process. As I just mentioned, we get a sequence in which an author is visited by 2 characters of his own creation, and they're holding him accountable for the things that he has done to them, for the fact that he has abandoned their story. And we're also splitting our attention between that storyline and the storyline of Susanna. She has many different voices in her head. Some of them are nefarious, some of them are benevolent, but every now and then, the nefarious does something for her betterment. That nefarious voice, Odetta, is occasionally the voice of reason, the voice of self-preservation. She is the cynic, she is sort of the scoundrel, but she is also the one who can very readily identify evil intentions. And in this volume, Susanna is pregnant, and she is possessed, partially, by a new personality who claims to be the demon mother of that child. I think Susanna's entire situation is a metaphor for what Stephen King was going through as a creator, as a storyteller, trying to birth this strange, demonic series, which is so unlike anything else he has written. I think it also probably felt to him like something to which he was obliged, as a kind of palm-slicing blood oath. He mentioned in his memoir, and I think he mentions in this volume, that there have been times over the past 30 years where people would send him letters from their deathbed, and they'd be saying, "Mr. King, I promise you I'm about to die. I promise I'm gonna be dead very soon. Can you tell me how the series ends?" And I think that that's part of the reason why this novel just ends abruptly. It introduces characters, fleshes out those characters, has those characters perform a function in the plot, and then abandons them. And it ends kind of abruptly, and I think the reason it ends abruptly, and the reason it kind of goes nowhere, the way Darwin defined a mathematician, he said a mathematician is a blind man in a dark room looking for a black cat that isn't there. I think that is the fate to which Stephen King is doomed in his effort to tell a story about what it is like to tell a story. It ends abruptly because there is no solution. Also, Susanna is faced with this question of like, yes, I want to give birth to this child, I want to be a mother, but what if the demon child to whom I give birth ends up hurting other people? I think he's also sensitive to the idea that by embarking on the Dark Tower series, by getting people hooked on this story, he was actually causing some kind of distress in the world by not living up to his promise to finish it. I think in this book he might be That's Bruno. Anyways, this is my sloppy, lopsided analysis of Song of Susanna. That, again, that's Bruno. Yeah, I'm very glad to be done with, I'm glad to be done with this series, even though it is one of the most memorable reading experiences of my life. I'm very excited to talk in an abbreviated way about the next volume, which is an even bigger clusterfuck. We need to open a cozier space for the discussion of the interesting fuck up, the beautiful disaster. That's it for book 6. Thanks for watching, and I am now providing editing services, critique service, query help if you're an aspiring writer. My email is thousandmovieproject@gmail.com. It is down there in the description of the video. Please reach out to me if you need editing or proofreading help with any kind of assignment. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you next time.